So I've prepared a little midrash, if you don't mind. Not too long. I was very surprised when the brother who presented commentary spoke about Matthew 25. You see, in this book, like I said before, I talk a lot about the congregation. I want to do something like this here. Where is it? Here we go. I talk a lot about the congregations of of Asia Minor, called today Turkey. 7 letters were written to them. Letters of encouragement, as well as correction. You see, the book of Revelation, I see it as something very simple. I'm very pragmatic. I try to go to the lowest level of interpretation possible to get the literal intent. Because without the literal original intent, we are prone to mess up in interpretation. So basically the intent is that Yeshua came to Yohanan and he wanted to give him a very important message that God had given to him. And the message was about things that were to come, were to happen in the future. So it's a little bit like this. Let's say I tell you, well, I got a revelation that in a year there's going to be a big earthquake here. So you got to prepare. You got to do this. Now, Yeshua was going to give an announcement about things that were very like persecution and a lot of stuff happening. So he wanted to prepare the congregation. I see the epistles as preparation of the congregations for the days to come. And what I see in this is not doctrinal preparation. You got to believe in the right theology, the right doctrine, read the right Bible version in the right language, have the proper length of seat with the proper color and the proper way to use it and all that and all this and all that. Somehow he doesn't talk too much about that. But in each of these letters, he gives them advice that has to do with faithfulness, commitment. He tells them what they did well and tells them what they needed to work on. And I work these things through in the book. Because these letters were written to diaspora congregation. Diaspora means outside of Israel. To congregation of Jews and Gentiles who knew the Messiah, though having never met him, in preparation for events to come. I would say, since these events have not come, I think these letters may apply to every diaspora congregation made up of Jews and Gentile believers who have not seen Messiah but know him from secondhand, from books or, In the case of Revelation, John was a first-hand witness. He was the last one to be. So I would say to understand these letters, to be able to understand them in their own original context and meaning and culture is important for us, because I would dare to claim that these letters are also a message to us, upon whom the ends of the world may have come. I do not say have come. May come, if not with us, in our children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren's day. But if the future generation are to be ready, we got to be ready. So I think it's really important to do that. And so each of the letter gives personal advice to these congregations. So, but each of the letters end with this sentence, and I'll read the first one from the letter to Ephesus. You can visit Ephesus today, So, and it says, those who have ears, this is Revelations 2:7, let them hear what the Spirit is saying to the Messianic communities. So first he gave, in Revelations 2, he gave advice for Ephesus itself. But then the message ends with a general message to the Messianic communities, us. And each of the letter ends with that. And the message says, to him winning the victory, I will give the right to eat from the tree of life, which is in God's Gan Eden, God's paradise. Well, this is, I read this and I say, well, to eat of the tree of life, and the other letter says to have a white robe, to have a new name. I thought this was inherent to being a disciple of Messiah. I've confessed, I believe, Yeshua is the Son of God, Messiah. In him my sins are forgiven, taken away. He's given me a new life. I've dedicated my life to him since I was 17. But there he says, to him who overcomes. So to me, when I see a verse like this, I like to put it upside down. I often do that with verses, with statements. I take them upside down because what it also means is that if you don't win the victory, you will not eat from the tree of life, which is in God's Gan Eden. And that's a pretty scary statement. It's reminiscent of what Yeshua said. Not all those who call me Lord, Lord will inherit the kingdom. Or even some of people, he gives a parable about the end of time, and he talks about some people who say, but Lord, haven't we prophesied in your name? Haven't we done miracles in your name? And he says, forget it, I don't know you. Those verses are very challenging. So, since he says 7 times, he that overcomes, and so on and so forth, in the book, I ask the question, what does overcoming look like? I think it's a fair question. And I would dare say that if I ask anyone, every person I will ask that question will have a different answer. Because there are many, many different opinions, some right, and some others who are also right, and then maybe others who are right also. And some wrong ones too. But even a broken clock is right twice a day, so maybe they're right too. So in order to find out a bit of an answer, I personally like to go to the guy who's got the whole program, who actually wrote the book about it, so to speak, and he knows what it means. He is the one Yeshua is the one who's going to come and decide yes, no, yes, no. He's the one. So what is the litmus test? What is the big thing? What is he going to ask me? Have you gone to congregation every Saturday? Or do you go on Sunday? How much kosher have you eaten? Is it what he's going to ask me? We can read other people's, but I don't, I think we can read it from the person himself. So, and Yeshua in Matthew 25 gives an idea. It might not be the only one, but it's one of them. And I think everybody can have their opinions. We can read from John, Paul, Ringo. But I think Yeshua would be I would say the most prominent one. Don't you think so? So in Matthew 25, he talks about the kingdom and the end of time, because Matthew 25 comes after chapter 24. And the beginning of 24 is when the disciples ask him, where shall be the time of your coming and of the establishment of the end of the age? So, and then he answers all the way through Matthew 24. And he continues in Matthew 25. And then he says in verse 1, then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, 5 were wise. For when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them. I'm reading from the ESV version. But the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, they all became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a cry, here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him. So all the virgins were there. They knew there was a wedding, and they knew there was a bridegroom. They were aware of the whole situation. And then all those virgins rose and trimmed their lamp, and the foolish said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. But the wise answered, saying, since there will not be enough for us and for you, go rather to the dealers and buy for yourselves. And while they were going to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast. And the door was shut. You know, like the ark. God shuts the door. Afterward, the other virgins came also saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. They knew the Lord, they knew the wedding, they knew. But he answered, truly I say to you, I do not know you. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day or the hour. Wow. So the next question is, what is the oil? And many books have been written, many sermons have been preached, many teachings have been taught about what is the oil. But you know, there is something remarkable about the Bible, is that it explains itself. There's really nothing wrong with the Bible. The problem is that so few people ever read it. We read about it. So, because if you go to verse 14, he's going to explain the parable of the oil with the parable of the talents. And he says, for it will be, he explains, for it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and trusted them with property. To one he gave 5 talents. You know, a talent is almost like a year's wages. It's a lot of money. To another 2, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more, but he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Okay, so they got something from their master. One day, the master comes back. And he comes back and settled accounts with them. In Hebrew, this is called cheshbon nefesh. It's the audit of our lives. That's what happens when you come. He's going to have an audit. He's going to say, I gave you talent. What's my return? I mean, people say redemption is free. I don't like it when people say that. If you think redemption is free, ask Yeshua. It's just that somebody has paid for it. And in what he gives us, he invests in us. So he's asked the people, what do I get in return? The one with 5 talents got more. The one with 2 talents got 2 more talents. But the guy, and he told both of them, well done, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. They won. They got the victory. They overcame, right? So, but the guy who did not get a return for what he was given, he was sent. That which he had was taken away, and he was sent to the outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So if we just take the text literally, the lack of oil represents failure to invest what Yeshua gave us. He gave us life, right? And through his work, we know the truth. We know the God who made heaven and earth. We have truth of the word. And he gives us help with the Spirit of God. I mean, come on. We're responsible. It's like if a company is going to come and give you money to do a certain thing, they're going to expect a return for what they invest. If a company comes and they're going to send you 5 years in school in order to learn a certain trade, they're going to expect in return, okay, now you work for us. Well, it's the same thing. Yeshua did something. He expects that we do something and that we give him a return. So to me, the lack of oil is the failure to have invested what he invested in us. And it's each of us to answer particular question. What do I have that I'm not sharing? It can be taken to the lowest level. A smile to the cashier, a thank you to somebody, a help. We're here as his representative. What would he do? What would Yeshua do? So, and then he gives an example of what we can do. Verse 31, where he says, when the Son of Man comes in his glory, all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations. He will separate people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep on his right, but the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. I would say these guys overcame and are given the rewards. And he's going to tell them why. Yeshua's litmus test, I think it deserves a bit of attention. He says, for I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me the drink. You gave me drink. I was a stranger, you welcomed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison, you came to me. I really like the prison one. Because even a prisoner who's done something bad deserves a visit. We're all sinners in the eyes of Hashem. So, but wait a minute, he didn't say because you followed the right calendar, because you learned your Hebrew right, because you went to the right church, you did the right things, you confessed the right doctrine. That's not what he said. And that's Yeshua speaking, okay? It's not somebody trying to interpret the words of Yeshua. It's him. So he says, and then the righteous will answer him and say, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, truly, I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. And then we know the rest of the story is that it goes in reverse. If we didn't do it to one of his brothers, we didn't do it to him. And it says, these who didn't will go away into eternal punishment. So this is, I would say, those are very important words. He didn't talk about doctrine. He didn't even talk about commandment. When a rich young man came to him and said, Lord, Master, how shall I inherit eternal life? And he said, well, you know the commandments. There he didn't even talk about that. But to me, the way I look at it is that, and I'll end with this, is that Yeshua was not teaching a new religion with all that was necessary was acts of goodness. But he was actually teaching the heart of Judaism. Because if we study the words of some of the sages, such as Hillel, who was probably still alive in the days of the Master, he's known to have said that acts of compassion and mercy, as well as not returning evil for evil, are equal to obeying the whole Torah. That's a statement from what is called the Talmud, from the sages of Israel. And it seems like Yeshua knew that. He was reminding the people of their own sages, their own teachers. And I think this stands as a reminder for us today, because if we want to be ready for this time of the end, we got to quit dividing ourselves along the lines, along the doctrinal lines, along social lines, along ethnic lines, along religious, dogmatic, doctrinal, and all that stuff. We've got to learn to love each other, help each other, support one another. Paul gave another message in 1 Thessalonians 5, how to be ready for the end. He says, love one another. Do not return for evil. Pray for one another. Support the weak. This is end-time prep. To show mercy, compassion, and not return for evil for evil. Because if we don't learn to hang together, we will surely hang separately. Abba, Father, we want to thank you for that today we can be custodians of these words that were preserved at high cost by the disciples and others who were faithful to write them, sometimes at the cost of their lives. And we ask that these words really touch our hearts and help us to know what it is that you will look in us at the time of your coming. B'Shem Yeshua Mashiach, Amen.